cancer is a metabolic disease, and therefore we have to basically control our metabolism, and that's done by the diet, not by some drug.
So Dr. Sears, today we're going to talk about cancer. And there's been a lot of studies that have come out showing the onset of cancer, even at a young age, like under 50, is on the rise. So today you're going to talk a little bit about, let's start with the basics. How do cancers grow?
Well, there's two primary reasons how a cancer develops. One is some type of mutation to what are known as tumor suppressor genes. These are genes in our DNA that are actively searching out and basically seeking out cancers and basically destroying them. Now, there's a mutation or some type of damage, they're not working very well. The other aspect that increases cancer is inflammation. Because one, it depresses the immune system, and two, it increases insulin resistance. And that's why insulin resistance has a strong association with the onset of cancer.
So let's get into the treatment, and then we can go to prevention. But what are the treatment options for somebody who's now diagnosed with cancer?
Well, the treatment options have not changed very much in the last 50 years. When I started doing cancer research, they are basically cut, burn, and poison. That means surgery, radiation, and basically chemotherapeutic drugs. They didn't work very well back in the 70s, and they still don't work very well today. Now, you say, but we have a new breakthrough. It's called immunotherapy. Not so quick. It's say unleash the immune system. Unfortunately, you also unleash the immune system to have the body begin to attack itself. So we still have a long way to go for immunotherapy, and we're primarily still in the area of cut, burn, and poison.
So one of the things you've talked about is the Warburg Effect. Can you explain that a little bit?
Well, the Warburg Effect was discovered by Otto Warburg nearly 100 years ago. And what he found that normal cells use really what are called oxidative phosphorylation. They use fats to make ATP for energy. But somehow a cancer cell becomes transformed. That now it basically switches to anaerobic metabolism. It uses glucose as its primary source to fuel energy. And what this means is that now in, let's say, oxygen-poor environments, like a solid tumor, once the program or once the cancer reprograms the metabolism of the cancer cell, it can now basically thrive and multiply because of the Warburg effect.
And so we hear a lot when people have cancer to be careful with your sugars and, watch your carbohydrates. So I believe it has to stem from this Warburg effect.
Well, it goes a little deeper than that. It's saying, okay, I'll eat no sugars at all. I'll eat no carbohydrates. I'll starve the tumor to death. It's not quite that simple. And that's why people say, I'm following a ketogenic diet, but my cancer is getting worse. It's because basically the cancer has already reprogrammed the cell. So we have to go deeper and say, okay, what was that reprogramming and how can we basically reverse that?
Mm-hmm. So is that a possibility?
Well, it turns out a recent article says there might be. It turns out the wonder drugs for treating obesity, these are known as GLP-1 agonists, turn off cancer cells. Say, oh my God, I can lose weight and not get cancer at the same time. Great news. But how? They activate AMPK. Now, AMPK is the master regulator of metabolism, but it's also a tumor suppressor. So the more you activate AMPK by the diet, more you're basically reducing the likelihood of basically having those transformed cells keep on growing. So it's a very exciting aspect because it's not a drug. It's saying it basically can be done by the diet.
So really you could be doing this for diet prevention of cancer, but even after diagnosis, you can change the tumor suppression by really paying attention to what you're eating, balancing carbs and protein, and following a healthier diet.
Well, that's true. And that's why they say, prevention is 1,000 times better than treatment, especially true when it comes to cancer. So how might basically you reverse this, reprogramming? Like I said, the simple-minded approach, follow a ketogenic diet. Okay, and it works, sounds good on paper, but the clinical data has been, pathetic at best. Is there another way to activate AMPK? There is. It's called metabolic engineering. Now, metabolic engineering is not a simple fix. It's basically a systematic approach. But first and foremost, what you have to do is to restrict calories. not just restrict carbohydrates, but restrict calories. Because you have another gene transcription factor called mTOR. If mTOR is activated, then basically that's the signal for the cancer to keep on growing. So that's why you need to have a balanced calorie-restricted diet, because that has been shown to basically increase AMPK and decrease mTOR at the same time. Vastly more sophisticated. But there's more. Now you want to be adding omega-3 fatty acids. Why? They decrease inflammation. Inflammation is another driver for cancers. And finally, you want to have polyphenols in your diet. Why? Because they reduce oxidative stress that increases inflammation. So if you basically want to prevent a cancer, you want to be following metabolic engineering from day one. Now, if you have cancer, you just want to up the stakes.
Right.
The diet remains the same, but now you're adding more omega-3 fatty acids and adding more polyphenols. Now, is this a guessing game? No, it's a testing game. You can measure your blood levels, how well you're following a calorie-restricted diet, especially the zone diet, is by saying, am I reducing HOMA-IR, a marker of insulin resistance? If the answer is yes, great. Am I taking enough omega-3 fatty acids? I don't know. Well, you test the blood again. You look at the ratio of arachidonic acid to EPA. You want to keep it in an appropriate therapeutic zone that keeps inflammation under control. And finally, am I taking enough polyphenols? Now you look at another blood parameter, this being glycosylated hemoglobin. If all three of those parameters are in their appropriate ranges, then you're doing everything possible to reduce the likelihood of developing cancer. And if you have a cancer, it's going to make the big three work better. The big three being cut, burn, and poison.
Okay, so that was my next question, is how this works, because people don't often want to go against traditional medicine. So how does it work in conjunction with people who are going through treatments and stuff like that? So.
Well, and this is traditional medicine says, my drug is so powerful, eat whatever you want to. You want some cotton candy? Go have it. You want to basically have an ice cream cone? Go have it. Treat yourself. It doesn't work that way. Cancer is a metabolic disease, and therefore we have to basically control our metabolism, and that's done by the diet, not by some drug. And basically, the more we ignore the power of the diet to basically modulate our immune system, the more we pay the price of having cancer develop at an earlier age with more devastating consequences.
So the other question I have for you, Dr. Sears, because this actually gets asked a lot and has come to us and over the years, is how do polyphenols fit in with people who are undergoing treatment? Because I know it's a big piece of it, but we do have some recommendations there for anybody undergoing
Well, most cancer drugs work by basically creating free radicals to destroy the cancer cell and invariably the normal cells nearby. So during cancer treatment per se, I'd basically cut back on the polyphenols. Mm-hmm. Now, once the cancer treatment is over, pump them back up. Because why? Because now basically you're on your own to basically restructure the metabolism of that cancer cell. And cancer cells, invariably, they are destroyed or basically reduced in size and say, we've cured the cancer. However, they start to grow back because there's always a subpopulation of the cancer cells which are resistant to the drugs. And this is the real problem in terms of cancer chemotherapy. It does work, but not for all the cancer cells. So this is why you want to jack up your immune system to make it your ally as opposed to your enemy in keeping those cancer cells under control.
You know where else I see a big benefit to this too, Dr. Sears, not only on the prevention and treatment side, but just having cancer in my family, there's always that window of time between when you get a diagnosis and when you can actually start treatment. And you're always looking to see, what can I do? How can I reverse it? So I think this is really a pivotal moment for diet to play a huge role in terms of what you can do to either stop progression or just, to get yourself on the right foot before you start treatment.
Well, let's add one more time point. The years before you had the diagnosis. Cancer doesn't happen overnight. So what's your best defense to make sure that you basically are reducing the risk of getting a cancer? Reduce insulin resistance. That you can measure. You say, I don't have a cancer. good. This is the time to start following the diet to make sure you reduce the likelihood that basically a cancer cell will form and multiply. And multiply because of the Warburg effect that basically reprograms its metabolism. It say, what I'm going to do, I'll basically sneak around the Warburg effect and reprogram the reprogramming to get it back to be a good neighbor to their friends.
And I think, that just brings home the point even more in that recent study showing that early onset cancer before 50 is becoming more prevalent. I think they said something like at least 40% of these are preventable through diet. So it really hones in the point of why prevention years earlier, plays a key role in these cancers.
Well, and but which diet? And that's why, again, the data is pretty strong, saying, metabolic engineering is a more comprehensive system, but it requires discipline. But if you want to live longer and live better, that's the type of discipline I think is easily instilled. I hope.